Hello and welcome to the Cherish Ball interviews. I forget which number this is. I've done enough of them at this point. You know the drill. I have a great guest with me, and we will interview them. So, my great guest, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Bardo, and this is interview number, whatever the coolest number is, because I'm the best.
That's probably... Well, sure, we'll go with that. I think it's 6. So, 6 is the cool number.
Sounds about right. I like 6.
6 is good. All right, so...
How many Pokemon are in your team?
Of course. So add to the introduction. So you obviously stated who you were. Where are you from, and what do you do for a living?
I live in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, and I am a surgeon.
Now you told me what kind of surgeon, but
I mostly do weight loss surgery, like bands, sleeves, and bypasses.
gotcha. That's really cool. Was so I also remember you said you went to school up in in PA, right?
Went to college at Penn in Philadelphia, and then did med school and residency in Baltimore.
Ah, nice.
So I
So
was
then, how did you end up in Phoenix?
just for work. Wife of Bardo and I wanted to move somewhere with better weather. This job popped up, and it worked out great.
Okay, yeah, you went to a very nice location for weather, I would say.
It is a breezy 113 right now.
Oh, just 113?
It was hotter yesterday.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Huh, that's really cool. Yeah, surgeon. That's a really good one to get into. With a lot of commitment to it. So
Yeah, it's work, but I enjoy it. Insides are cool.
yeah, that's great. You barely meet too many people who actually get the title. So wait, can we call you Doctor Bardo?
You can. I am Dr. Bardo.
Excellent. That's all we need to know. If you go to school for 8 years, you might as well force people to call you doctor.
I actually went to school for 9 years. I had to do an extra year because I didn't do any pre-med stuff during college. So I went back for an extra year to do that.
So wait, you had to do all your regular coursework, but then you had to go back for pre-med, or did you
Yeah,
do
I
pre-med first and then?
nah, I majored in math, and then I worked in finance for a year and hated it, and
Ah,
then went back after a year working and did all my pre-med stuff in 1 year.
oh dang, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was pretty intense.
Yeah, it sounds about right. But hey, it's great to hear that you got where you are today with where you are at. It's really impressive to hear that.
Yeah, it's worked out pretty well for me, so I'm happy.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so how did you get into Pokemon in general slash competitive?
Sure. So actually, my kids were really into Pokemon, like mostly the cards, like all the kids collect.
Hmm.
And I like video games, so that's right around when Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee came out for the Switch. So I got Let's Go Eevee for them, and we were playing that. And I forget what I was looking up, maybe like how to get the Mega Stones in that game or something. But I was on Google or YouTube, and I saw a video of someone playing competitive Let's Go, basically. And so I watched that video. I'm like, this is wild. And then watching that led me to Poke-Aim, where I learned about Showdown. And then Poke-Aim led me to Wolfie, where I learned about VGC.
So we have your kids to blame for the most part. Is that what I'm hearing?
For the most part. My son has just started playing on the ladder. He's actually doing pretty well, and I'm training him to be the 2025 Junior World Champion. So look forward to that.
Hey, that's awesome. It's a nice to see that. I guess your kids got you into this, and now we're all the way up to here.
Yeah,
We've come quite a long way.
I'm gonna make the city have a parade once he wins.
That's funny. When's he gonna start playing draft?
Once I'm comfortable with him talking to strangers online, which is like not at all anytime soon.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, it's a really
Like that.
awkward
That's the nice
place.
thing about the ladder for kids is that you literally can't communicate with your opponent. So I'm totally
Nope.
fine with him going online to do that.
Yeah, no, you can't do anything really other than just queue, which is really nice actually about it. Is I don't like games with chat boxes. I think that just leads to more issues than it solves. So yeah, that's great.
Although I did see a post recently of someone who had anything goes showdown team that was five unouns and a love disc, and it was I love disc DICK, which I thought was pretty funny.
Interesting. The team probably did not do very well, I would imagine.
I think he said he got some sort of crazy one shot with a Specs psychic on like a really good mon that's weak to psychic. I forget who though.
That's cool. So yeah, so then you got into the competitive from watching Pokegame, and then Pokegame led to Wolf. So you went from basically singles to doubles. I guess what did you find more appealing about doubles than you did singles? Because you did start with Pokegame, you said, but then moved on towards the Wolf and the VGC side.
Yeah, I think singles is just boring as hell. I don't like hazards. I don't like switching. VGC, like you can just bang a game out in 10 minutes, and it's just, I don't know, it's more exciting for me and easier to wrap my head around.
Yeah, fair enough. I will say much faster and more games.
Yeah, I know a lot of singles players like to say it's not slow, but like I've watched singles games, man. They take forever.
I can't imagine playing it on like the Wi-Fi, the game itself. Like on Showdown, it's fine because like you just click buttons. But
at least on Wi-Fi, it's 3v3, so it's a little faster.
Yeah, but then there's also the casual. Like I've seen 6v6 draft leagues on Wi-Fi before. Those take ages.
That's brutal. A match might take like an hour. I don't have time for that.
No one does. So we click buttons and doubles instead. And
yeah, just follow me, Max Airstream. It's worked so far.
Yeah, that's good bread and butter for Sword and Shield. Max Airstream. All right, so let's move on to the next question. So you joined this community from APDL.
Yeah.
How did you find that server?
Through Reddit. James
that's the common answer I've gotten. It's like, yeah, Reddit. So that's good.
Yeah, I think that's where people kind of congregate for this sort of thing. So I was actually in the first season of the APDL, and I was in every season up until the most recent one when I took a break.
Yeah, that's amazing to say. You're one of the last, or you might be the only one who's, I would say, applied and had a team in every season of this era.
Yeah, I think like maybe Lucian was in like the first season of APDL and then dipped for a bit, because I know that my record against him is much better than you'd expect given how good we are respectively.
Yeah, that's cool. I usually beat him when it doesn't matter, so he beats me when it matters. But yeah, it's really cool. I think you might be the only one who's played every season of this community, which is wild to say that. So,
yeah, and I had some good seasons and some bad seasons. I still have yet to win a playoff game, I think, though.
Well, but there was one season where you did win some playoff games. And why don't we go ahead and move over to that? So I have your team now up on the screen if you want to look at it. Or you just remember. Or I can read it to you. But so this is one of the merger servers to SCDA. This was Oxowave's server. It was called ADL, which was, I think, it was auction or amateur. I forget which one he called it.
It was amateur to start because the first two seasons weren't auction. Season 3 was the first auction season.
Yeah, exactly. And to say that you came out on top for the first season of the auction, which is now Luxury in SCDA, and it's one of our most popular divisions, is incredible. To say that you were the first to take down
I was
division.
the first. I mean, anyone who's seen me play knows I'm not that good. So what it really was is I had an unfair advantage because Oxowave had mentioned the idea for an auction at some point, and I thought it was an awesome idea. So he and I had been chatting about how to make an auction format work for weeks, prior to the announcement of the official format. So I had a lot more time to plan and prep than everyone else going into it. And I really think that's why I won. I just had a lot better plan going into the draft/auction.
Yeah, well, when we go into your team, it'll be much easier to understand how you won. So, but I guess before we do that, talk to us then. So the format, it was auction, but you played Series 8, if I remember correctly?
Series 8, yeah, one restricted max allowed.
Okay, yeah, so that's Series 8. So the first season, this was Series 8, and we see the first Mon on this team. Talk to us about Zacian, Crown, and Draft.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know how much people remember Series 8, but I think probably the dominant, if not the most popular archetype was Lapdog, Lapras, and Zacian. And the thought behind that is that Gmax Lapras sets up screens, and then nothing can kill Zacian behind screens. And that's pretty much what I thought. I'm like, Lapdog is the best, in general, it's the best archetype, and certainly against teams that aren't prepared for it, through the auction, it has a chance to just roll over everything. So I went into it saying, I'll pay whatever it costs to get Zacian. It doesn't matter what he costs. He's the best Mon in the format by far. You can put the rest of the team together around him. And similarly for Lapras, once you have Zacian, Lapras is pretty much worth whatever you have to pay for it. And then I kind of had a few other things in mind. I wanted a good electric type because I forget why, but I felt like electric was really good in that format. So, sorry, getting some wind here. Hold on a second. So I kind of went in with a few targets. I wanted Zacian, I wanted Lapras, I wanted Zapdos or Thundurus, and I wanted a good Intimidator. Ideally, Incineroar I was willing to pay a lot for. Arcanine I was willing to pay a lot for. And then, those guys kind of got out of my price range, so I fell onto Scrafty, who probably has been my, most consistent Pokemon across all drafts. Whenever I have Scrafty, he always puts in work. Definitely one of my favorite, if not my number one favorite draft Mon.
Yeah, there was so we did a question of the day a while back of like what Pokemon like people identified with. So like Zach with Probopass. I predicted all the mods at the time, and I put you as Scrafty.
Yeah,
because I've seen you use this mod so much, and you've had such great results with it, and you talk so highly of it. It's affiliated with you, I think, at this point. For those that know, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I think it's a very, very underrated Mon in draft formats. It's always under-tiered. It's always undercosted. Mm-hmm. And, you look at Scrafty and you say, oh, it's 4 times weak to Fairy. But an Assault Vest Scrafty can take 2 Fairy moves from, like, more Pokemon than you'd think.
Yes.
It gives you Intimidate. It gives you Fake Out. Dark Fighting is good stab. It
and
gets
whenever
good
their
coverage
Fairy
for the
types
move.
died of a Behemoth Blade, it makes things much easier.
Yeah, it's tough to bring Fairy types, against Zacian. So... Mm-hmm. I felt pretty comfortable with Scrafty as my Intimidator. I probably brought him to every match that season. I think in draft, Scrafty kind of always needs to have an Assault Vest. He doesn't have any other moves that really matter. Usually once he comes in, gets an Intimidate and a Fake Out off. If he gets a second move off, you're pretty happy. Then after that, I was trying to think, okay, I need to have another mode if I don't want to, lean heavily into screens. Comfey is another Mon I think is always undervalued in draft. You can get priority weakness policy off on Lapras, and then once Lapras is at +2, it can put some work in independent of screens. So that was definitely something I looked at after that. Then the rest of the team kind of fell into my lap. Umbreon is a Mon I didn't have high on my radar, but I think it was like 10 points. It was some ridiculously low price, and Umbreon's one of those Pokemon that can just wear you down if you're not 100% prepared for it. And that's what it did. It just sticks around. It throws out snarls. It heals up. It can do a lot of things, and it's just hard to take out because of how bulky it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And then when you have the screens and you have the Intimidate, it gets even worse for people. Especially since then they go to sleep or you Moonlight up, and Umbreon's just, there's nothing they can do.
Yeah, and then after that, kind of the rest of the team was just to fill gaps. I think Garchomp went for 1 point. Which is, what happens in the auctions. Really good Mons go when people out of points, and Garchomp's solid. I don't know how much I use Garchomp, but it's something you have to be prepared for, because if you're not ready for Garchomp, it can do a lot. What I think actually happened that draft is I wanted a Moongus, and Oxawave had like 1 more point available, and took a Moongus, so I took Comfey instead with those points, and then just to get something with Follow Me or a Rage Powder, I took Foongus at the end. Rotom Mow was just because I wanted a grass type, and I think Rotom Mow is pretty solid. And then Gyarados, I think, was another Mon that just kind of, went for a price that was worth it. But clearly the heart of the team is Zacian, Lapras.
Yeah, and that duo, if it's strong in
Drafty.
VGC at the time, it's going to be stronger in draft. That's usually how that works, and those two complement each other so well. And then pairing it
And
with all these mons here, it's hard to
yeah,
go
I mean,
wrong.
my team was just a monster. No one else was as ready for the draft. No one else had a team as put together as mine. I had a huge advantage. And then, going back to what you said, that's true for a lot of stuff, but other things, when I had Venusaur is kind of easy to prep for, right? You put safety goggles on something, and you take away a lot of what Venusaur does. So there are some combos that work great on the ladder that are easy to prep for, and then there are some combos that work great on the ladder that you can prep as much as you want. You're not doing anything against Lapras and Zacian. Nothing's one-shotting Lapras, and then if I get screens up, what are you gonna do to Zacian?
Yeah, and what I learned from playing Zacian too is you never need to go max speed. You can run bulky Zacian in draft almost every time, and it is wonderful.
Yeah, I mean Zacian's just insane. We were talking about the new auction format, which is Series 12, and I said, if you have 10 Pokemon and your budget's 200, just bid 191 for Zacian. He's worth it. You can figure the rest of the team out with one
How
pointers.
much did you spend when you bought it? Do you remember?
I believe it was 125, or maybe I think it was even less than that. I think it went for 125 the second season to Ilya, who knocked me out of the playoffs. I think it went for something ridiculous, like maybe even in the 80s or 90s. It was the first season. No one knew
Yeah.
exactly what things were worth. So I definitely got it. I nominated it immediately. I wanted to just kind of set the tone.
Starting bid 100.
I think it went for less than 100, or right around 100. It went for a lot less than it should have, which gave me a lot more flexibility for the rest of the team.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, the team was super cool. I helped you prep a bit that season too, and I was having trouble beating you in those prep games. And
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can do against it. It has,
no,
the best restricted, who doesn't need to max, and then between Lapras and Zapdos, and Garchomp, and even Gyarados, it has great max options.
yeah, and
That you
there's
just
so many interchangeable pieces that make the team so you have two electric types, but they do very different things. Zapdos is the
yeah
more offensive one. Rotom is the more bulky defensive one. Then you have two fire. Wait, you only owned one fire type, but you had two water types. They do very different things. And so whenever people are prepping for them, they could be going for one of those modes, but then you do the other thing, but it's still consistent because you still have your types, and that's really important.
Yeah, and then the thing that I thought was really the most useful is going into game one, no one knew if it's Light Gray Lapras or
Policy.
Weakness Policy Lapras. And until you know that, the team's really hard to play around.
Yeah, because you don't want to hit it. Obviously, Lapras has so many neutral attacks, though. They would hit them with that, but they could be scared of it. And that's how a lot of people need to play against Lapras. When at the time on the ladder, you couldn't hit this thing with super effective moves. You were just going to die on the crackback. That's just how it is. So,
and then once Lapras sets up, screens and rain, you can't stop Zacian.
Yeah, it's really difficult. Pairs really nicely. So, yeah, this was a very nice, solid team for the first season auction. It was very well. It was a good finals run. I think you defeated Junebug, who was the reigning champ of the last season of season 2 of ADL. So
yeah, it was a good run. I think I lost one regular season game. I'm not sure why. And then once I was champion the second season, I went in having fun. My team lost to Ilya, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely lost to Ilya. I think he had Zacian.
yeah,
In the playoffs. That second season of the auction, I just said, I'm just going to get all the redirectors and all the setup mods and just see what happens. And I rolled through most of the regular season until someone, in week 8, figured out, hey, maybe we should run Haze against this team. And once that cat was out of the bag, the team kind of fell apart.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but all right, yeah. So this was your team. Very good run. So you said you only had one loss in the regular season. What would you say, other than I guess Zacian and Lapras, which other mon was the clear standout to the team? What was, other than those two, which was the next most important piece?
Yeah, I think that every Mon except one performed sort of exactly how I expected it to do. And the one Mon who overperformed was Umbreon. I mean, there were so many games that Umbreon just kind of kept me in it or stuck around longer than it should have, to the point where I think it went for some insane amount the second season because it had been just such a menace the first season.
It's got
So
to make
Umbreon,
you feel good whenever you get it for cheap and then it goes for more the next season. You feel like you did something
yes,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
And then, yeah, so definitely Umbreon there. And then, the MVP of my heart is always Scrafty.
Of course.
I think Scrafty's the, fourth best Intimidate Mon at worst. And I think I'd rather have it than Landorus if Landorus is any more expensive.
Yeah, it has served you quite well. So I'm excited to see if that's where you go for in this division, which we're going to go ahead and go back to the main screen and talk about this main division, I would say. So the Cherish Ball division, Series 9, only champions invited.
Yeah, and a lot of them is really the twist. It's a big draft.
Yes. So what is your mindset going in? Because you did have a slight break, a little unexpected break, but how do you feel like you can rebound from that and really make a name for yourself in this Cherish Ball?
Yeah, I mean, my first rule when it comes to drafting these days is just talk to Lucian and do whatever he says, because he's just really good and knows a lot about draft. And so he and I chat a lot about stuff. He's definitely my go-to guy for, prep and things like that. I think it's tough. It's hard to know what to do with your A tier. On the one hand, you're like, okay, there's a lot of teams. The Mons are going to be spread out. Like, if you get first pick, do you just go for a banger that you're going to max every game, like Dragapult? I think that has a lot of credit. Dragapult's awesome. There's not a lot of Mons that can counter Dragapult, and so they're going to be spread out pretty wide. But on the flip side, some things do counter Dragapult, and then you're kind of in a rut. So do you want to spend your A on something that is support that you can bring even against teams that are ready for it? In the season that I went undefeated, Arcanine came to literally every single match that I played. He was in my 6 every time. He was in my 4 every time. He played every single match. And there's something to be said for that, because even against teams that, have ground types and water types and rock types, you're still bringing Arcanine because it does so much stuff other than damage. So, I think that's really the big thing is, what do you want to spend your high tier picks on? Do you want to do something that you need to be offensive? Yeah. So I'm still kind of churning on that, not to spoil anything, but I think I'm leaning more towards the former. I think that for me, just the way that I play and the way that I approach games, if I have one Pokemon that I know I want to max the majority of the time, that's going to make team building easier.
Yeah, and with 24 players in this draft, I think it'll end up being the picks are going to be limited. The tiers are going to get starved. So it's really going to come down to, when do you go after the lower tier picks, or how do you value the lower tier picks versus the higher tier picks? It's going to be very interesting to see how this division plays out, with how large and how competitive it's going to be.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is interesting is that, when it comes to 3 Mons with free points, I think you can do
ACE,
or BBE.
Yeah,
and
so you can do BBE.
A lot of times in that format, I think BBE is the way to go, but the B tier doesn't have enough Mons for every team to go BBE. So I think in this, given how many teams there are, it almost makes sense to wait for your free picks and kind of see where other people are going. So that's going to give you an idea of which tiers are going to have quote unquote better Mons left over, towards the end of the draft when you're making those free picks.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be fun to watch the draft. I'm going to try to do a lot of draft analysis stuff throughout the week to see how the draft progresses, because it's going to be very exciting watching these caliber of players playing it.
Yeah, and it's people coming from all different formats. So I'm happy that it's a format that is in my wheelhouse. I'm interested to see how people who, prefer singles or prefer sort of the weird mythical formats do in sort of a straight VGC format.
Yeah, definitely. So that's going to wrap this interview up. Thank you so much for joining me. It's nice to talk to you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah. So looking forward to seeing you participate this season. Again, back ready, better than ever. Hopefully draft a better team than your Ultra Ball team. God, I took that team over.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I hated it. I hated it so much.
Yeah, it was really based around my thought that Tentacruel was really good, and I don't think Tentacruel is very good.
No, it was not.
Yeah, so my bad.
But hey, now you know Tentacruel bad, and we can go from
Tentacruel, not the best.
Not, yeah, definitely not. All right. Well, again, thank you for joining me. For those watching, thank you as well for tuning in to the 6th interview of this. There are more to come. Make sure to follow Cherish Ball in its entirety. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch throughout the season. And yeah, any final words, Bardo?
No, just have fun playing Pokemon. I'll see you guys out there.
Exactly. Well, my name is Spades. My guest Bardo. We are out.
Later, guys.